We are here to remember Carolyn Ann Smith Managan, and to, with our remembering, celebrate her rich life. You've known Carolyn as your wife, and your mother, and your grandmother, as your sister, as your friend, and your teacher, your colleague. You've known her as your fellow choir member and musician, and now we all know her in a new way. She's no longer with us physically, but her impact on our lives continues. In this memorial service and in the days and weeks and years to come, as memories of Carolyn come to you, welcome them, cherish them, give them a place of honor next to your grief. Carolyn had so many talents. She made the stole that I am wearing. She was a singer and a musician. She was an excellent teacher. Perhaps most importantly, and something that ALS could not take from her, she loved her family and friends so very well. Carolyn also loved music. The service today contains many pieces of music that were dear to Carolyn. And as we experience this music, I hope that we'll let Carolyn's love wash over us, reminding us again and again that love never dies. Will you pray with me? Spirit of love, hold us this day in your peace as we remember Carolyn and celebrate her life. Gather us in stories, in words, and ritual. Hold us in the comfort we provide to one another. We are grateful for the experiences we shared with Carolyn, and we are grateful for her life. Help us this day, Holy One, to find ways to incorporate our love of Carolyn into our living. Remind us that as we think of her, she continues to be with us, that her love lives on in us. Embrace us each in your care, we pray. Amen.
I'm Jean Goff Martin. Linda Curry Gibson and Carolyn and I have been friends since our youth. Linda is with us virtually today in Arlington, Texas, and I agreed to share her memories for her. Carolyn was my friend since childhood. We didn't go to the same elementary school, but because our parents knew each other, we saw each other often. We even did a family trip to Estes Park. At the age of 15, or maybe 14, our moms, along with 6 others, thought we needed to hone our hostessing skills, so they started a birthday club. We girls got together monthly and rotated houses so that we could practice menu planning and setting a proper table. Some of us were less than enthusiastic, but Carolyn kept us on the right track with her no-nonsense approach to everything. We went to church together and sang in the choir as well. Carolyn and I were altos, so we sat facing the sopranos. All it took was one cross-eyed grin from our partner in fun, and I would nearly lose it. Carolyn to the rescue with her "not here, not now" look saved us from embarrassment more than a few times. After high school came college, careers, marriages, and kids. Distance and no cell phones kept us from being connected, but thank goodness for reunions. She always knew about my kids and I about her girls. She was proud of them, and of course, the grand girls were the apples of her eye. I recall that neither rain nor sleet nor snow would keep her from heading to the East Coast when she was needed. I always admired Carolyn for her talents and intelligence. I was in awe of how she tackled her disease with such courage and grace. I am appreciative of Mike keeping us informed of her condition and connecting us by Zoom so that we could see her and talk with her. A life well lived, but cut too short. Of course, it began in Arkansas City, Kansas. The old black and white photo is of 4 cute little girls in party dresses sitting at a child-sized table in my family's backyard. It was my 4th birthday, and Carolyn was there. A move the next year put me in a different grade school, so Carolyn and I didn't cross paths until junior high and high school. There, Carolyn was raising the curve in all the math, science, and accelerated classes. As luck would have it, I was doing more of the social sciences and arts. We knew each other through our group of girls who were mutual friends. Let me interject here a memory Carolyn shared a few years ago regarding high school. The discussion was high school disappointments. Senior prom came up. Evidently, the young man who took her announced afterwards that their post-prom entertainment was to go drinking. Carolyn flatly told him, "Just drop me off at home." Every parent's dream. After college, Carolyn, and now Mike, stayed in Houston. My husband and I were in Illinois, at least until 2010, when we started wintering in Sugar Land, close to grandchildren. Carolyn and I rekindled our friendship with some road trips, shopping, lunches, and even lured some high school classmates down to Texas for some mini-class reunions. We discovered our mutual passion for women's rights and proudly participated in the 2017 Women's March Houston. The next year, it was March for Our Lives in Sugar Land. We were surprised to admit we had become senior activists. Surprising because neither of us had time nor inclination during our college years. In conclusion, those of us who knew Carolyn as a class leader in high school had no idea all she would go on to achieve. Impressive is an understatement. As our classmate Lynn Calder shared, she has left an elegant legacy for her daughters and granddaughters. They will miss her presence, but cherish her memories forever. We all shall.
Good afternoon. I'm John Flanagan, one of many colleagues who had the privilege of working with Carolyn for many years. A very close friend of Carolyn's, Tom Wright, asked if I would speak for him. I will do my best to make it through for him and for Carolyn. These are Tom's words. I met Carolyn almost 35 years ago when I joined the math department at Episcopal High School. It was a very close-knit department, and Carolyn and I had desks next to one another in a small workroom the math department shared with the science department. I learned very quickly that Carolyn had a keen sense of justice, who always rooted for the underdog, whether it was a struggling teacher in his first year at Episcopal or a struggling student in a math class. She stood up for anyone who worked hard but came up against a brick wall. Carolyn never minced words, but she always had a sharp sense of humor. Working so closely together in the workroom, Carolyn, Nuette Fahm, and I were always borrowing calculators and books and worksheets from each other's desks. One day, Carolyn and I were grading papers during an off period when Nuette came flying into the workroom and immediately started searching for a worksheet or something or other in the file drawer of my desk. In a comment that today would be completely inappropriate, I asked Nuette what she was doing fiddling in my drawers. Carolyn burst into laughter, while Nuette just looked puzzled, having not any idea what was so funny. By the time Carolyn explained the double meaning behind the word drawers, we were all doubled over in laughter. Nuette was completely mortified, but she never went in my drawers again. Carolyn could dish it out, but she could also take it. We teased her unmercifully at a lunch table when she proudly told us about Elizabeth's new position at the State Department, and we wouldn't believe it. We kept telling Carolyn, you know, Elizabeth is actually working for the CIA as a spy. And we asked her if Elizabeth had gotten her license to kill yet. She just pursed her lips and said, stop it. Carolyn was one of the kindest souls I ever met. She was always helping out, whether it was volunteering for the Episcopal auction, or as a chaperone for a homecoming dance, or helping calculate senior GPAs at graduation, or organizing projects for Students of Service organization. Carolyn was especially fond of helping animals. She and Mike often fostered cats. One memorable species-conflicted cat Carolyn named Mouse. Carolyn was okay with non-binary long before it was cool. We all got together often for dinners. I remember many barbecue sandwiches at Good Company, ham with no sauce for Carolyn, or pot roasts at Black Eyed Pea, or hamburgers at Prince's, plain and dry for Carolyn. As you can see, Carolyn was a meat and potatoes person, not much spice for her. We continued to visit after Carolyn's retirement, and this horrible disease took hold. Even as it became more difficult for her to talk, Carolyn always shared the exploits of her granddaughters and always asked about my family. I will miss her greatly. But now her struggle is over, and I'm sure that as God welcomed her home, he said, well done, Carolyn, my good and faithful servant.
I'm sharing the words of Christine Liu. Christine says, honestly, I can't really remember the first impression I had of Mrs. Managan. I remember spending a lot of time in her classroom in the old A building, both in class and in tutorials. And when students would get rowdy, I remember her strictness, but also her patience and her kindness. When I had to wait after school for my dad to pick me up, she would let me stay in her classroom to finish my homework. When I had questions over homework problems, no matter what time of day, I could find her in her office, and she would always help me. She was never too busy to lend a helping hand. She was so influential in my life that I decided to do Teach for America right after college and teach high school math. I felt so lucky to have received such a good education that I wanted to give back. I remember when I didn't pass the math praxis exam by one test question. She invited me into her house and helped me study. I remember how I felt when I earned her respect. I felt so proud of myself because she was proud of me. Over the years, we became friends, and she always genuinely was interested in what I was up to. She was there to celebrate my accomplishments, and she would highlight them even when I tried to downplay them. She never seemed jealous or bitter of the life that anyone led, even when she was diagnosed with ALS. What I remember most was her sense of conviction and the way she laughed. She always stood up for what she believed to be right. We would talk about her volunteer work at church, the ongoings at EHS, and the time she spent with her grandgirls. Everyone who really knew her would agree that she was good, kind, generous, and intelligent, and that she had a sense of humor. I remember visiting her multiple times, but in particular once in the hospital. I remember her crying in all her beautiful vulnerability. I think she was happy and grateful to have me there to see her. It's a feeling that I'll always remember, connecting with another human being on such a deep level. No words were needed. She knew that I was there for her. She was the mom I never had, and she was, without a doubt, the most brilliant and best person I've ever known. She taught me everything I know and I've used in my teaching career. She changed the trajectory of my life, and I will be forever grateful for that. Her life was cut short, and that makes me really sad. I wish we all had more time with her, but I believe that she would want all of us to continue living our lives in remembrance of her. Mrs. Managan, you are so loved, and you will be missed. Thank you for touching our lives in ways that you could have never imagined.
Carolyn has been my dear friend for a very long time. I recall in our early acquaintance her daily commute with another Covenant member to teach at Cy-Fair High School, way out in Cyprus. I met Michelle for the first time when she was only a day old at Herman Hospital. There's strong memories of Elizabeth strolling through their house on Evergreen Street, reading a book and twirling a lock of her hair around her finger. During the Christmas season, it was an annual treat to answer our doorbell and find Carolyn and the girls delivering their delicious ice cream pie to our family. How did they have time for that? Carolyn was a faithful member of Covenant Singers for many years. An excellent sight reader, she nevertheless would take music home to practice. There was one occasion when she had a flat tire on the way home and accidentally placed her music on the roof of the car. A puff of wind blew it into the street. Before she could recover it, a car had driven over it. I am certain that that music with the tire tread mark is still in our library. There are countless things Carolyn has done for us, for me and my family, that make me so grateful for her. Our son, Eric, would not be teaching at Episcopal High School were it not for Carolyn. Jim and I have enjoyed the exquisite beauty of vacations at the Managan's cabin in Estes Park, Colorado. Laughter, a few tears, and the joy of sharing time with Carolyn over the years remain with me always.
Thank you all for coming today. I'm Carolyn's brother. It's been pretty difficult to lose her the way we did. She fought so hard. I just want to relate one story from my childhood. You know, being a young pig-headed kid and having really bright sisters. I was 3 years behind them, and I don't know how many times I heard from my teachers, "You're just not like your sisters." And especially Carolyn. The story I'd have was when I was a junior in high school, and we were in second semester of chemistry. And I did not like the chemistry teacher. Jeannie, I apologize, and Linda listening. But I did not like him, and I did not pay attention. I'd sleep in class. I did everything I could possibly do to make it tough. And we got to the last quarter, and my grade average, I was going to get an F. And Carolyn came home from Rice at the end of the semester, her sophomore year, and I'd prepared the parents. And in any event, she tutored me, and we spent about a day and a half on a weekend, probably 8 hours, something like that. And I took the test. I say I took the test. I wish I could have had her there, but I took the test, and the teacher had told the class that he was going to count the grade as a double score, and it was a nationally standardized test. Well, when he started to pass out the tests afterwards, you know, he was a little puzzled, and he finally got to me. Well, it turned out, of all the students that took the test, I did the best. And I wound up, I think they said it was the 97th percentile. But I always remember that and how really great she was teaching. She really had a gift for it. And how she was able to get through to a smart aleck little brat, but loved her very much. And I'm so sorry that, you know, her suffering through the last few years. And I just hope everybody will remember ALS and how important it is to have research and try to overcome this for other people and future generations. And I think that's about all I should probably say, because I'm probably going to start crying.
Good afternoon. Those of you I haven't met, I'm Elizabeth. I'm the older daughter. I just want to say thanks for coming. It's very gratifying to see all of you here and know that the love and respect that you had for my mother. It still seems really strange to me that I'm standing here giving this speech now. By my reckoning, it was about 15 years too early. Mom's own mother lived to age 87. And I had long expected the same to be true of my mother. After all, she was truly a force of nature. There was no stopping her. She never tooted her own horn. Mom was much more into showing than telling. Yet somehow I think everyone here today knew that she could be counted on to handle the toughest problems. And if you were in a fix, you wanted her in your corner. To the extent she allowed herself to be proud, Mom prided herself on always being useful. Mom was an amazing problem solver. She would have made an excellent general in military logistics.
Am I right? I'm right. And she never quit till a job was done and excellence achieved. For those of you who remember the Energizer commercials with the bunny, the punchline, "It keeps going and going," is a fitting comparison. As an adult, I've lost count of the time she came to visit me, and instead of relaxing, she spent her time taking me shopping for curtains or shelf organizers, helping me put IKEA furniture together, cleaning my house, taking me out to dinner, and then she ended the trip by saying, "Well, I wish I could have done more on my list, but I guess we did okay." ALS is an unbelievably cruel disease for anyone, but I think it was especially cruel for someone with my mom's quality of being unable to sit still and let others take care of things. It was extremely hard for her to have the roles reversed, to have to let others take care of her. And she moved into the late stages of ALS, and it seemed she would not last much longer, although actually she had more than a year to go. She worried about who would take care of Dad. That was the most important thing to her. Just as my mom always had very high standards for herself, she also had them for her kids. I remember once trying to get her off my back, probably because I got a grade not as good as she thought I could have gotten, by saying that nobody was perfect, and she was unfairly asking me to be perfect. To which she replied, "That's true, nobody's perfect, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to be as close as you can." She said it, I swear. I definitely liked to complain as a teenager about Mom being hard on me, and when it came to grades, she often was. Mom doled out praise very sparingly, it's true. But as I've gotten older, it seems to me that it wasn't just Mom being tough. In a way, she was giving me a sort of compliment by being hard on me. She truly believed that I was smart enough and capable enough to live up to her standards, and she didn't want me to settle for less than my best and regret it later. Although she could be tough, Mom was a big believer in grace and second chances, and when the chips were down, she was there for you. I remember how Mom handled probably my biggest screw-up as a kid when I wrecked Dad's 1985 Oldsmobile after school one day less than a month after I got my driver's license. Long story short, I made a mistake, panicked, and ended up going over the curb and hitting a telephone pole. Totaled the car. Dad was out of town for work, so Mom was on her own. I remember being super nervous calling her at work to tell her what happened. I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was something to the effect of, "Oh, are you okay? I'll be right there." But I remember they were not words of anger. The closest she got to harsh words were when she decided to take me to the ER for x-rays just in case. And as it happened, I did have a break at the collarbone. And at some point along the way, I blurted out, "Mom, I don't understand. Aren't you mad at me? I wrecked the car, I cost you a lot of money, and you haven't yelled at me yet." Mom snapped at me, "Elizabeth, I don't have time to be mad at you. I'm too busy being worried about you being hurt. I can be mad at you later." Actually, though, I never faced any punishment over the accident. She told me later that it was a stupid thing to do, but it was just that, a stupid mistake. It's not like I was drinking or speeding, so why should she punish me? If anything, she admitted I had sort of done her a favor, because she and Dad had talked about him getting a new car and letting me have that one. But she wasn't sure it was really safe. But this way, by wrecking the car, I saved her from having to tell me no, and I'd only gotten mildly injured compared to what she feared could have happened. Mom also had a great sense of humor that tended to the sarcastic and sometimes a bit sneaky. She did like her practical jokes. One time, she, Michelle, and I were hiking in Colorado when Michelle and I were kids. I wanted to try hiking to a lake, Black Lake, further down the trail than our target of Mills Lake. But my sister, the tired hiker, didn't want to go that far. Michelle did agree to go to an intermediate point, a minor lake, Jewel Lake, which is somewhat hidden in the woods. Once we got there, it was hard to tell exactly where the final destination was, where you could say, "This is Jewel Lake," because there was no sign, like there was for some of the others. Eventually, we got to a point that I figured was the end, but Mom kept going. I said, "Mom, do you think," but I stopped short because she was giving me the "be quiet" look. One of my regrets, I never got her to teach that to me so I could master it. And then she winked at me. I realized, oh, she decided to take advantage of the situation that Michelle didn't realize we'd gotten there and just keep on going. And by the time Michelle figured it out, Mom said, oops, oh, we went too far. We must have missed the lake. But hey, it's not that much farther to Black Lake, so why don't we just push on and get there anyway? Michelle realized that, mad as she was, there was just no point in arguing. Another illustration of her humor that I did not actually witness, but it is too perfect not to mention it. In college, my friend Beth dated one of Mom's former students at Episcopal, and they came over to our house for dinner one night. And he told us about the time that my mother climbed out a window, first floor, of course, in the middle of teaching a class. You're nodding, okay. Apparently, she was getting really frustrated when her geometry class, I think it was geometry, was not paying attention to the lesson she was teaching. And at some point, she just remarked, "Y'all are not paying attention. You are paying so little attention that I could probably climb out of a window right now and nobody would notice." That failed to get a reaction. So she decided to teach them a little lesson. And she walked over, opened the window, hopped out, and decided to take a little lap around the school to boot. When asked about this years later, my mother admitted that she had in fact climbed out the window. It was true. She wasn't actually planning to when she made that comment, but she decided, oh, what the heck, because she was getting tired of being ignored and she wanted to get their attention. My mother worked hard and she would do anything for you, but she was no doormat. And that was another lesson that I got from her. She always taught us to stand up for ourselves, to do the work, but when you did the work, that you should demand the respect that you had earned. And as part of that, she always taught us to stand up for ourselves, to reach for what we could attain, never think we couldn't do it, and always do our best to make her proud. And I'm gonna miss her so much. But that's gonna stay with me, and she's taught me what I need to know to raise my girls the same way. I love you, Mom.
I'm reading Michelle's words. Family was most important to my mom. Her love language was acts of service, so she always went above and beyond for us. When my grandmother moved into the nursing home, my mom moved in with her for the summer. There was an empty bed in her room, so my mom stayed there so that my grandmother wouldn't have to wait a long time for aid to help her. When I played softball tournaments, she always made me fresh, ice-cold Gatorade for each game, along with a cooler of ice-cold towels for the team. She would stay up late washing my uniform and then get up early to make me breakfast and get me to early morning games on time. When I had my wisdom teeth removed, she crushed ice and changed my ice packs every few hours, including the middle of the night. She helped me move at least 5 times, including across the country to Charlotte. She enjoyed organizing the kitchen and instead insisted on precisely measuring and cutting shelf liners for all my cabinets. She came to Charlotte to help me when both of my daughters were born. She stayed by my side through several hours of excruciating labor. Despite ALS making it difficult for her to walk, she didn't hesitate to hobble down the hospital hallways with me. Several nurses and aides at the hospital asked if my mom was a retired nurse. When I brought my newborns home from the hospital, she set her alarm and got up with me every 2 hours during the night to help with the baby and make sure I didn't feel alone. I didn't have to ask for her help. She figured out what was needed, and she did it. Her granddaughters were her pride and joy. She loved to rock them to sleep and read to them, take them to the zoo, and spoil them rotten. She spent hours making them blankets and quilts, clothes and doll clothes, advent calendars. Her love for her family was her motivation for enduring her suffering and ALS. The disease robbed her of so much, but even in full paralysis, it couldn't stop her from showing her love to us.
Well, you've heard from childhood friends, teacher colleagues, former students, Fran from the Covenant community, and from Norman and our girls. There's not really much more I can say about Carolyn that you haven't heard or feel. But I think I'll tell you how we got here. What happened that made she and I go together and get here this far. Now, every time these days you have a series of movies, you have to have a prequel or a prologue in a book. So let's go back to July of 1956. I was a 6-year-old turning 7, and we had a group of families going to YMCA of the Rockies, Estes Park, in a caravan to spend a week there doing all sorts of day camp kinds of fun. And I was absolutely captivated by the mountain. And if you all have been to Estes, there's this wonderful view of the Front Range of the snow-capped mountain as you come over the hill to go down into town. And that had blazed in my head. I had some kind of undesignated illness. I don't know whether it was motion sickness, because I was learning I had to have Dramamine or altitude, whatever. But 3 or 4 days I was in a little clinic upstairs in downtown Estes. Mom and Dad were there the whole time. But anyway, got out of there, and I wanted to do more of this. Well, as it happened, we never went back. But we traveled all over the country, but I always said I wanted to be Estes Park. Okay, that's the prequel. Let's go forward to May of 1967, as I was graduating from high school. I was at a men's business club, sort of like a Rotary, one of those names, and they were giving me an academic award. And so afterwards, the men would come by and say, "Congratulations, good luck, see you later." Well, then one man came up and said, "Hi, I'm Dr. Norman Chandler. And there's my niece, there's a pretty young blonde girl. She's awful smart, and you might like her. You ought to go look her up next year." Well, I would say thank you, and I filed that into everybody's got a niece who's pretty, and maybe so. Okay, now we're in first class in architecture studio at Rice at the end of August, 1st September, and the professors just paired us up with whoever was sitting next to you. So the next semester, you guys are a team and work on things together. So we started to get to know each other. The girl's name was Patty Gazzarba. Well, about a week into it, she said, "Oh, asked about our roommates and whatever." And I said, "Who's your roommate?" Whatever. Well, an interesting gal from small town in Kansas. She wants to be a history and a math major, and her name's Carolyn Smith. Well, I just kind of went, "Oh, wait a minute here. There's a pattern growing on here." But I, met her in a few little dances, whatever. We never really went out or anything, but knew she was there. So at the end of the school, everybody was packing up, walking across campus to say goodbye, whatever. And I saw her, and something said, "You need to get next year. Go meet that gal." So I did. But again, first couple of weeks, just at events. We went together or met somewhere. So finally, we had a weekend that was football free, and I said it was her birthday. And the girls reminded me that it was her birthday. I'd forgotten that little detail, but it was important that we did. So I said, "Okay, we're gonna do something neat. We're gonna go over to Herman Park, and we're gonna have a cookout, and we're gonna there was a dance or something, and we go watch the movie." First time we'd really had just the two of us go to the date. It rained. I was insufficiently prepared for wet cooking. I did something really strange, and that was -1. -2 was I left her to guard our stuff. We were in one of those pavilions over there, and I forget what I had to go get, some food, fuel, something to get back and salvage the dinner. We did survive it. We did have steak. We didn't get sick. We went to another party, was a dud, so we ended up in the basement of Weiss College in the TV room watching a couple of movies and joking around with some of the other guys. Well, it was time to go home, and in those days you had curfew hours. So we had to get back at a certain time. And so I got an impulse as we were standing up ready to leave. I kissed her and I waved. You've heard all these stories about she will this or she will not, and And then she kissed me back. And from then on, as the trite little phrase is, the rest is history. Well, let me tell you one little bit more about that history. 4 years later, we married, and all this, the kids and the adventures and the stories and the fun and games. And then on last June 17th, 2022, 50-year anniversary, our wonderful day was spent overnight in the most miserable conditions in the St. Luke's emergency room. We'd done several of those, and they knew us and we knew them, but it was not the way one does the 50-year anniversary. And Carolyn, pain and unhappy, still cracked a joke or two about, the happy anniversary, dear, and stuff like that. But it was really a sad situation, but we'd made it. And another side about that is, remember my prequel? Well, it so happened that Carolyn's family owns a cabin in Estes Park, Colorado, a mile from the entrance to Rocky Mountain National Park and a mile from the YMCA bakery where she learned to cook and she helped us a lot. So, all these various things life threw at me, and they all stacked up, and it was inevitable, it seemed, that we had been together.
Before our closing prayer, we wanted to make sure that you know that there is a reception following the service in the Huff Fellowship Hall, which is just right across the courtyard. So after the postlude, please join us there. Will you pray with me, please? Divine love, we pray that we will go this day in peace, that we will go in hope. We pray that we will remember Carolyn, that we will celebrate her life and her love, and that we, encouraged by the best of Carolyn's example, will live our lives in service to each other, striving for excellence. May we let the gifts of courage, wisdom, and thanksgiving come to each of us today and in the days to come. Courage to face the reality of the change in our lives. Wisdom to speak openly and honestly of our grief, of our love, of our memories of Carolyn. And thanksgiving for those we love. Thanksgiving for the love that will never die. Thanksgiving for Carolyn Managan. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank